Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and before we get started on tonight's story, I'm going to let you know about a new book available now from tonight's author. The Family, written by Dale Drake. Some of you may be familiar with Nicholas Raddick, but you haven't heard his entire story, and it's available now on Kindle and paperback on Amazon. Take a look in the description down below. And now, on to tonight's story. Okay, David Bennett said, putting on his sunniest smile. Hit it, Nige. Nige gave him a 3-finger countdown, and then pressed the record button. Hey, boys and ghouls, Bennett winked into the camera. Here we are, live in the beautiful coastal village of Mavagesi on another adventure, and boy, do we have a great show for you over the coming days. Right here, in this idyllic village, lays a dark secret, a house of murder and madness, known as the Vandraven House. Over the next few days, we here at Ghost Seekers will investigate and infiltrate this infamous house to see what horrors dwell inside. Join us over the next few days, right here on this channel. And remember, darkness dwells within. Cut, Nigel said. We got it, first take and all. Thank God it's not summer. Jenny grinned from where she had sat out of view on a small wooden bench, watching the murky seawater lap at the harbor's concrete sides, a steaming hot chocolate to ward off the growing winter breeze. I heard this place is packed with visitors for most of the year round. Yeah, well, David replied as Nigel packed up the equipment. Looks like the locals get a break every winter. How about we get a drink? Nigel said, eyeing up a nearby pub. I could upload this to YouTube, we could finally get warm. Sounds good, Jenny said, dumping what was left of her hot chocolate in a nearby bin. They have a nice crackling fire by the window. I saw it as we passed. Okay, sounds good, David said, leading the way. Maybe we can get a reaction from some of the locals. I hear they're real touchy about the place. Phones at the ready, he grinned. The pub was called The Lantern, and did indeed have a real open fire, as well as low-hanging beams, soft leather sofas, and a generally welcoming attitude, which surprised David. He was half expecting it to be like that scene from An American Werewolf in London. You know the one, where the two guys walk in and enter the pub, and it goes silent, and the locals all stop and stare. But apart from a few quick glances as they took a seat by the fire, nobody paid them any mind. So, what are we having? David said, reaching for his wallet. Pint of lager for me. Make that too, Jenny said, stripping off her many layers. All right then, David said, crossing the room and leaning heavily on the bar. The barkeep came round, his shirt sleeves rolled up over his muscular forearms. What can I get you? He said in a heavy West Country accent. David ordered and paid, but lingered for a while, sipping his drink, and then dove right in. Excuse me, he said to the big man, who was now polishing glasses with a half-clean dish towel. The man smiled and came back across. Itch anything else? Just a little information, perhaps. Oh, the big man said with a raised eyebrow. What do you want to know? The house, David said, watching the man's face closely. The one on the hill, facing the sea. The man's eyes narrowed. I don't know of any house. David laughed at that. Not any house. Funny that you live in a village full of them, but let's see if I can refresh your memory. House is called the Vandraven House. Me and my friends are investigators. We look into the paranormal and such. My YouTube channel has close to 1 million subs, he said proudly. This story, it's gonna push us right over the threshold. You ain't thinking of going up there, are you? The man said, taking a step backward, his face draining of color, and David was shocked to see a drastic transformation in the man. As a matter of fact, we are. The man muttered something to himself and stalked away, and was soon replaced by a smiling barmaid. What the hell? David said, gathering up his drinks and sitting back down by the fire. You took your time, Nigel said, drinking heavily from his pint. Man could die of thirst. A woman too, Jenny said, sipping at her pint more gingerly. Just trying to gather a little information. You perhaps see how the locals react to our plans. And? Nigel questioned. Well, if the reaction to the barkeep's anything to go by, better keep a low profile. That bad? Jenny asked, looking concerned. Just then, the door swung open and a tall man strolled in, rubbing his hands together briskly and heading over to the bar. Seeing the man, the barkeep reappeared and poured him a shot of something, which he drank gratefully. They talked for a minute or two, then the tall man came across to where the group was sitting and plonked himself down at their table. Smiling, he took another sip of his drink and waited. David coughed nervously. Can we help you with something? The man sighed and rubbed at his bearded chin that was just starting to show the first flecks of gray, before reaching into his jacket pocket and placing his warrant card face up on the table. The name's Brian Lansbury, Constable Lansbury to you. Nigel scooped up the warrant card and checked the man's ID. Jenny looked over his shoulder before he gently put it back down. So what can I do for you, Constable? David said. We haven't been here long enough to break any laws. Not yet, you haven't. But if you go into that old house, you'll be doing, and I have no problem charging you with the trespass. Now wait a goddamn minute, Jenny said, but David held up a restraining hand, keeping his voice level. From what I know of the house, it's been derelict for some time and has no owner, so how can you accuse us of trespassing? I'll tell you how, because that old place reverted back to the parish council some years ago, and they say that anybody goes into the Vandraven place is trespassing. Now, is that clear enough for you? Besides, what do you kids really want to do up there? You have any idea what's gone on in that house over the years? Do you know how it all started? Lucas Vandraven, David interrupted smoothly, who retired to Mavagassi after his many years in business as a merchant seaman. 2 men died in the building of the house. Later, Lucas himself went insane, killed his wife, Elizabeth, her maid, Matilda, and his manservant, Stevens. There was talk of foul practices, worship to some unclean gods or spirits. Some years later, another man moved in, shipbuilder. His name slips my mind, but not his cause of death. He was found hanging in what was once Lucas Vandraven's study. After that, the house lay empty for some time until the Jonas family moved in and then promptly went missing without a trace. Oh, all their belongings were found, but as for the family itself, gone. Never to be heard from again. Then, in 72, almost 60 years later, another family, the Dorchesters, found in the basement, their bodies torn, twisted, as if by some terrible force. Or, so the story says. And, most recently, the Malones in 2010. 1 man, 1 woman, 2 little girls. It said the father was found in the basement, his family stabbed to pieces and strewn all about him. They later found your predecessor, one Andrew Clutterbuck, who was sent to investigate, hanging from the rafters in an upstairs sewing room. And then there was the 2 village drunks who tried to break into Lucas Vandraven's tomb. 1 missing. Other, now a raving lunatic. Should I go on? He smirked at the constable. I wish you wouldn't, the other man replied, looking a little green. And so you know your history. History of the house. Still, you want to go up there? I do. I intend to record every minute of it, put it online. You see, Constable, I don't believe it. Not a single word of it. Spirits, ghosts, don't exist. But they bring in views. Those idiots on the internet just soak that shit up. Do you know how many so-called haunted houses I've been in? Actually slept in. Me and my crew. I've been pulling this shit off for nearly 5 years. The biggest horror I've seen was a used condom being fought over by 2 rats. There's no ghosts, Constable. Just rumors. Superstitious nonsense presided over by small-minded villagers. Fact is, you can't stop me from going up there. And even if you stop me now, I'll just come back some night a week from now, maybe a month. Hell, maybe a year. But I'll get in. Small-minded villagers, huh? The constable said, throwing back his drink before standing and straightening his trousers. You're right, of course. Can't stop you from going up there. I'm only 1 man. I don't intend on getting anywhere near that godforsaken place. Neither will anyone else from the village. But take my advice, he said, eyeing all 3 of them. Give this one a miss. If you value your lives, perhaps even your souls, give this one a hard pass. Or what? Nigel piped in. You'll arrest us when we come out? Constable turned and started heading out the door. "Come out," he laughed over his shoulder. "Who says you're coming out?" With that portent of doom hanging between them, he exited the scene. "Did you get all that?" David said, turning to Jenny. "Sure," she grinned, taking her cell phone from out of her jacket pocket. "Audio only, but I got it." "Great," he grinned back at her. "Nigel, start uploading." Late in the afternoon, they sorted their gear and drove up to Beach Road, where the Vandraven house was located. Nigel carried the recording equipment and lights, while Jenny and David got lumbered with the camping gear. "Look at that," Jenny said, as they walked down the abandoned street. "Just like on Google Maps. Every one of those houses is empty. You know how much a house in Cornwall with views like that goes for?" she said, nodding towards the sea. "I mean, the entire road's on a cliff. Look at the views. It goes on for miles. You can almost see the curvature of the earth." "Not a flat earther, huh?" David grinned. "Guy killed his wife on this road," David piped in. "Skinned her alive, stitched her skin to a dressmaker's dummy. Guess that and the old house pretty much cleared people out of here. It sure is spooky, though. All those empty houses," he said, walking past yet another dilapidated for sale sign. "Constable stories got you quaking in your boots," David laughed. "Not me," Nigel replied somewhat waspishly. "But I don't see the reason we have to stay the night. Goddamn spiders and mice and the shutters." "Don't worry, Nige," Jenny said, throwing a stiff elbow into his ribs. "I'll protect you." "Well," David said, coming to a sudden stop, "here it is. Vandraven house." The house itself was set a little ways back from the rest of the house, a kind of mini mansion set in its own grounds, with rearing stone walls now falling into despair and covered with clinging ivy. The main gate was black iron, rusting hinges starting to sag. The house itself was in the same poor condition, its roof sagging, its stone walls starting to crumble. The many windows looked out at them with a kind of greedy indifference, and David began to feel almost smothered in its shadow. "For a place that's supposed to be off limits, sure as hell ain't done much about it," Jenny said, looking around. "No chains on the gate, no boarded up windows, not even a no trespassing sign. Not anywhere." "Remember what the constable said," Nigel replied, "about nobody from the village ever coming up here? Guess they don't even have the stones to board up the place." "It's like some kind of mass hypnosis, or hysteria," David said, turning to the other two. "Hell, we could be doing the village a favor by spending the night here and proving, once and for all, it's only an old house, nothing to be afraid of." Sure, Jenny said, squeezing between the rusting gates. "Bet they'll throw us a parade and everything." "That would be great," David grinned, following after her. "Maybe even get our faces on the cover of the Cornish Times or whatever shit splat these yokels read." "If they can read," Nigel said, passing through the equipment before joining the other two in the leaf-strewn courtyard. "Look at these," David said, crossing over to the tall wooden doors and bending down. "Those lions?" Jenny asked, squatting down beside him. "Yeah, look. There's the crest of the Vandravens. See a clipper ship riding the crest of a wave, and above it, this great eagle carrying a struggling fish." "Talk about delusions of grandeur," Nigel said, looking up at the sky. "We'd better get inside, set up before it gets full dark." They set up in a large dining room. The part of the house had been renovated by one of the more recent owners. The floors were smooth, hard wood, the walls replastered. Even these fresher works were now starting to show signs of decay. The rest of the house, however, was like something straight out of a Hammer House horror flick. All peeling plasters, sagging timbers. Even with the windows mostly intact, the house was cold, perhaps colder than it should be. The air stank of rot, age, and bad dreams. Once they were seated, they took a tour around the house. David did his bit, explaining the history of the house for the viewers, while Nigel followed with the camera, Jenny behind him fussing about the lighting. It was an old routine for them. First, they told the spooky story, the sun setting ominously through the windows. Then they would catch a few hours sleep and do a live stream in the wee hours of the morning, exiting the house with the coming dawn. It was all very symbolic, and the viewers ate it all up. After they were finished, they went back to the dining room, ate a few snacks, and drank tea from a flask. Nigel smoked one of his many cigarettes while David and Jenny complained and pretended to choke. All that hype, David said, climbing into his sleeping bag. Not a thing. Not even a ghostly moan, a rattling of chains. You sound so disappointed, Jenny said, doing the same. David ignored her and nodded over to Nigel, who was already sound asleep. I guess the mice won't be bothering him any. Haven't seen so much as a single spider. But David said nothing, his breathing already starting to become heavy and deep. Nigel awoke to a sound. He wasn't sure what it was, but it was enough to wake him. The room was now almost pitch black, only lit by a full moon that sailed outside their window. Or maybe it wasn't the noise. Maybe it was the ache coming from his full bladder. Tea always made him want to piss, but hey, he was an Englishman. What choice did he really have? With a sigh, he unzipped his sleeping bag, switched off his headlamp, and checked his watch. It was a little after 2 a.m. The others would be up in about an hour, so he moved slowly and quietly, not wanting to disturb them. He was in the hallway now, near the ornate staircase, heading for the front door to relieve himself, when he heard a child's giggle from above him. He stopped in mid-stride, his blood freezing in his veins as he turned, his eyes bugging, his mouth hanging open. There was a little girl on the stairs. She was dressed in 80s attire. Shh, she whispered to him. Sissy says we have to be real quiet. Daddy did something bad to Mommy, and Sissy says we have to hide, just like hide and seek. Suddenly a knife exploded from her chest, blood flowing from her mouth, cascading down her chest, and she turned and grinned at him through bloodied teeth. Guess he found us. He'll find you too. A disembodied hand shot out of the darkness, grabbed a fistful of her hair, and dragged her screaming back into the shadows. Nigel turned and ran, his bladder letting go, a scream locked behind his chest. He burst back through the dining room door, falling to his knees, trying hard to breathe. David and Jenny were beside him. He felt a sharp pain and his vision swam back into focus. Sorry, Jenny said. I thought you were going to faint. What the hell happened? Jesus Christ. It's true. It's all fucking true. I saw her. Saw who? David asked. A girl, Nigel snapped. A little girl on the stairs. Fuck this, he said, gathering up his equipment. I'm getting the hell out of here. Wait a goddamn minute, David said, grabbing his arm. You're telling me you actually saw something in here? Didn't I just say so? Nigel said, shaking free. A girl on the staircase. Somebody stabbed her. Wait, okay, just wait. David sighed, grabbing up a flashlight and running out of the room. Don't! Nigel called after him. But he was already gone, Jenny hot on his heels. Hold on, David, she called as they entered the hallway. He was on the stairs, flashing his torch all around, but there was nothing. Just years and years of dust and deathly silence. Think he was playing some kind of trick? David said, heading back down. You think a trick made him piss his pants? Jenny whispered back. Sleepwalking? Maybe a bad dream. David continued. Hey, Nige, listen, man, he said, entering the room. But there he stopped. Nigel wasn't there anymore. All his equipment was, even his headlamp still rolling around on the floor as if discarded in a hurry. What the hell? Where did he go? He didn't come past us, Jenny said, licking her lips nervously. Perhaps he hightailed it through the back door. Without his camera? You know how much he loves that thing? I mean, okay, fine. I reckon that asshole, he's probably just playing one of his stupid tricks again. What? Jenny said. Without his flashlight. Something is going on, David. Maybe he's having a nervous breakdown or something. Hell, he could still be asleep. He barely said 2 words to us. I've heard of people holding entire conversations while sleepwalking. Some people even drive their car. Okay. So, Now what? David said. What now? Now we find him and we get the hell out of this place. This feels all wrong to me. It's like the place suddenly woke up or something. Okay, look, don't get all freaked out on me, David said. Let's go find him. Grabbing up his flashlight and shrugging into Nigel's discarded jacket, he went into the hall, Jenny hot on his heels. Take the kitchen, okay? I'll take the study and the library. Meet me back here in 5 minutes, okay? What, are you out of your mind? You know what happens in all those horror movies when people split up? Jenny said, clawing at his arm. This isn't a horror story on a stupid YouTube channel, Jenny. David snapped. The quicker we find him, the quicker we can get out of here, okay? Now, go look. That said, he stomped off, shouting Nigel's name. Asshole, Jenny muttered, heading towards the back of the house. Nigel, she whispered, her breath steaming the night air, her hand picking up a slight tremble. She was in a large pantry now that led into the kitchen. Her flashlight picked up a rusty-looking sink, fat droplets of muck-colored water plinking into its chipped, sagging surface. A huge chopping block sat in the middle of the room, gauged and splintered, and tall, rusting shelves with bulging canned goods formed disorienting shadows on her torch. Suddenly, the door behind her slammed shut. She screamed and spun around, hammering on the door, calling David's name. Elizabeth, a voice floated out of the darkness. Is that you, my love? Jenny turned around slowly, as if in a dream. There was a woman, mostly obscured by darkness, only her face was clearly visible. She was beautiful, her skin the color of sweet caramel, her voice musical with a hint of the island. Where have you been, my darling? She beckoned towards Jenny with one smooth, rounded arm. Come to me, my love. Let us embrace as we did before. Jenny actually found herself taking a small step forward. The woman was so beautiful, her voice enchanting. Realizing what she was doing, she shook herself and pushed her hard back against the door. The woman frowned and stepped more fully into the light. That's when Jenny began to scream. David spun about. For a moment he thought he heard something, but it sounded far away, as if coming from some long-distant tunnel. Jesus Christ, Nigel, where the fuck are you? He said, shining his flashlight over the dusty study, illuminating many torn and tattered books. His flashlight passed over an old ornate desk, but then suddenly flickered back. There was a man sitting there, his clothes ancient and tattered. Lucas, David gasped, all the air leaving his body, his bowels feeling hot and heavy as he began to shake uncontrollably. You have to burn it, the apparition beseeched. We're trapped here. It feeds off us. So many of us now. Burn it, the apparition's eyes widened. You must go. It's coming. Suddenly, Lucas Vandraven screamed. His body broke out in weeping sores as he began to rot. He was crawling over the desks now, grinning through blackened teeth. Yes, I feed, it leered, and I will have you, just like I have your friends. You will know an eternity of torment, locked behind these walls. It was reaching for him now, its skeletal fingers scraping across his jacket, breaking his paralysis. He fled from the room, with great clumsy strides bursting into the hallway where Nigel and Jenny awaited him. We have to leave, now, he screamed at them, trying to look everywhere at once. When they didn't move, he trained the flashlight more fully upon them. Nigel grinned at him through the shattered remains of his face. Still don't believe in ghosts, David. Why don't you stay a while? There's so much more to see. That's right. Jenny giggled from beside him, her head dangling at an obscene angle. It's so beautifully dark here, David. We can be together forever. Suddenly, she snarled and lunged for him. He turned to run, but got tangled in his own feet. With a cry, he fell backwards, right out of the front door, and scrambled away as a multitude of grasping hands grabbed at his feet desperately, trying to drag him back inside. Turning, he fled, sure that he was being pursued by some unknown terror, as he lunged through the gate and into the street. He didn't look back, but leapt into the van, slamming the door and locking it tight behind him. Only then did he look. But there was nothing. only an old house, dilapidated and falling into ruin. He grabbed the key and started up the engine, but then stopped. "You have to burn it," a voice whispered through the recess of his mind. "For the love of God, burn it down." His fear was being replaced now by a smoldering rage. "Fucking house," he snarled. "God-cursed fucking house." Trying hard not to think, he got out of the van, he went to the back, he grabbed up the spare jerry cans of gas. "Okay, motherfucker. Here we go," he growled. Pushing back through the gate, he approached the house, being careful not to get too close. He sloshed the gas through the still open doorway, leaving a trail backwards towards his feet. Thankfully, he was still wearing Nigel's jacket and came up with a Zippo lighter emblazoned with a soaring eagle on its side. "Okay, you son of a bitch," he grinned, flicking open the lighter. "Time to die." That said, he threw the burning flame onto the ground, igniting the gas that roared towards the house. But just as it was about to hit the doorway, it stopped. Defying the laws of physics, the flame suddenly turned and raced back towards him. With a cry, David turned to flee, but it was already too late. The fallen gas can at his side exploded, consuming him in a shower of searing flames. He began to dance and scream as his hair caught fire, and his skin began to melt. The last thing that David Bennett ever saw was the Vandraven house looming above him. The windows filled with smiling faces as they watched him burn. Inside the house, all was quiet. Spiders spun their webs. Mice ran through the decaying walls. A grandfather clock ticked softly. And the house waited and waited and waited. Outside, the crest of Vandraven blazed like a beacon of madness in the soft moonlight. Hey there kids, it's me, MrCreepyPasta, and I just wanted to tell you thank you for watching tonight's video, or listening to tonight's episode of the podcast. And as always, I want to give a very big thank you to everybody who supports me on Patreon. If you scroll down to the description at the very bottom, you'll find a whole bunch of people there. Also, we've included this nice little scrolling thing because the number of people who support me on Patreon has gotten so big that I'm afraid it might actually max out the description. So we've included this here as the little scrolling text on the end screens. So everybody on that scrolling text, everybody I'm about to mention right now and mispronounce all of your names, and everybody who can donate even $1, thank you so much. A very big thank you to Jordan Alexander Sanchez, Stephanie Butler, Reaper61167, Bobby Karman, Tristain, Pelton, Chance Burnett, Diana Kraus, Thiccy McQuicky, SamaHigh, CrusaderChocobo, SpookyShel, Atomaurus, Grand Moth the Milky, Big Smoke 369, Captain Scurvy, SaltyIrishPoet, Estebean, Brayden Morris, Nate Kuhl, HorrorFan1212, Hour Minute Second Time, Kyle Reznak, David Martin, Scare-ington the Unkempt, Robert Malcolm, Angelus, Spanky, Snoochie Boochie, Seclude, Lupita Galvin, That Creepy Chick, Tyler Fletcher, Merxenum, Red Shadow Cat, Xavier the Cheyenne, Demix, Sean Cadieu-baker, 6 Gay Rats in a Trenchcoat, Turtleman, Rob Like Sharp Things, Cryolinian, Xavier Graphius, Lord Life's Best, Goring Tramagasi, Maria Walker, Emily Mitchell, Crazy Kid, Mr. Marcus Blitz, Eka Limchok, Dirt Diver 030, Matt Bach, Voice of Sand, Coffee Zombie, Hidden Tiger, Shelly J, Jeremy H, Psychomel, Nana, Deleted Account, Melted Lake, Tali Sue, William King, Darth Miver, Michael Ortiz, Titanic Aries, Bardo Hawk 764, Lambda M98, Harley, Sashi Suzaku, Cronut 509, Kaylee Ambrose, Suji Campbell, Stricken, Freddy Krueger, Happy Birthday Jason Wilson, Lisa Cottrell, Caspian, Hades Nephew, Tater Chip, Acid System, Prozac and Pancake Appreciation Society, Benjamin Welverick, Cryptic Nightmares, Kiri the Sloth, Fester's Lampshade, Sky Harbor, Nico Kyle, Rafael Rodriguez, The Ginger Bros, Aaron Stormcrow, Daniel Polson, and Corey Kenshin. As always, thank you guys so much, because you guys help me do everything that I do here. You guys help pay authors for stories and commission stories and do everything that I can do to make this channel and make this podcast the best it could possibly be. So thank you all for supporting me here. And as always, everyone, sweet dreams.